You've probably guessed by now that it took me a few more minutes to comprehend. Tom, Charles began. I want you to know that Mary, Kayla's mother, and I are very disappointed in what Kayla did. That said, we think you are overreacting to it. Yes, she went and had sex with another man, and it was extremely disrespectful to you, especially the way she did it. But it was just one mistake. You two have been together for a total of 20 years. You have 2 wonderful children. Think about all of that. Surely, you can get over this little incident. You don't have to destroy your family over one mistake. A little mistake, really. My daughter said, "Really, Dad? Mom's right. You really are an ass," as I hung up the phone. That was the last thing I heard from her. She attempted to text me several times over the next few days, but I simply erased them. Even a few voicemails were there, but I quickly removed them after hearing the first few sentences. All of it was the same. Those were simply the words of my ex-wife, delivered in my daughter's voice. She is content with the choices she took 10 years ago. The supposed olive branch turned out to be an insult. She had the option to shove the entire olive tree in her ass. I'm Tom Williams, then. My ex-husband was Kla Williams. Our marriage lasted for around 17 years. Naturally, when it all came apart, I was held responsible. That's what happens to helpless pricks in our fantastic divorce courts in this country. The ex-wife gets full custody so she can tell the children how awful their father is, and the man is blamed for it. This country's divorce laws, I swear, were drafted by a group of feminists who despise men and want to screw anyone who has a penis. We spent 17 years of marriage, as I mentioned. Our 2 kids are a 16-year-old daughter and a 14-year-old son. I believe that everything was going smoothly. I was certain that my spouse felt the same way about me. Our kids were well-behaved, intelligent, athletic, and adorable. Josh was an outgoing and sporty youngster, and Carly was a daddy's daughter. As a mechanical engineer, I was earning a respectable salary, and Kayla was working as an accountant. We were both rather cute, and we both played sports to stay in shape. Carly was, as I've stated, a true daddy's daughter. I felt like she was infatuated with me and had me wrapped around her little finger. She decided she wanted to be an engineer like her father because she had a strong aptitude for math and science. The day she turned 16, she obtained her driver's license. She loves to drive, just like me. She used to go to the garage when I was 10 years old and give me wrenches to use while I fixed the different toys I got. I'm a tech fanatic without shame. I enjoy collecting and tinkering with vintage cars, most of which are GM models. She made me fall in love with them. We used to go to car events together on the weekends and would lust over these amazing vehicles all day. We appeared to be literally attached at the hip. I could also handle housework very well almost every weekend. Carly has always taken pleasure in lending me a hand around the house. I gave her a rudimentary education in electrical, drywall, painting, and plumbing. She accompanied me while I installed new appliances. She even assisted me in laying the new concrete slab adjacent to the shop. I was the one Carly came to for advice and support with everything else, including homework, conflict with friends, counsel on things she was thinking of doing, boyfriends, etc., even though I was thrilled that she turned to her mom for feminine concerns. We had frank and honest conversations with one another. I was the person she came to when she needed assistance. Kayla had a mommy's boy, and I had a daddy's girl. Unlike his older sister, Josh had little interest in vehicles or mechanics. Though he wasn't very enthusiastic about science, he was an excellent student. His strongest subjects were social studies and English literature. He got to speak about his desire to practice law. Josh and I did hang out, of course, but he seemed closer to his mother than he did to me. Kayla has appeared a touch off for the previous 2 weeks. It wasn't a huge thing, she was just acting a little aloof and has been closing off for a brief period of time lately. I asked her a few times if everything was well, but she would just wave me away. Normally, I was glad when she ignored me, but this time, that wasn't the case. Again, nothing major, just a slight anomaly. It was a Friday evening. I had just returned from my job. As was customary on Friday evenings, it was 6 o'clock. Kayla was already home, as she always was. As usual, I hollered out the door as I arrived home. Interestingly, there were no aromas of cooking dinner. Nor did Carrie come down to say hello. Even though she's a teenager now, she still says hello to me when she comes home. Josh and she must still be hanging out with pals. All right, I headed upstairs to change into more comfortable attire for the evening after placing my briefcase in my office. My wife had her LBD dress, seductive lingerie, stockings, and 6-inch CFMs all out on the table when I walked into the bedroom. That clarified why there was no smell throughout dinner. It seemed that we were spending the evening out instead. Though I wish she had told me to be careful about that, I had no other plans. When I walked in, Kayla was still in the bathroom putting on cosmetics. I inquired, pulling off my shirt, "Where are we going, honey?" "We're not leaving," she answered. It was strange. "Well, if we're not going anywhere, why are you wearing so much makeup and laying out a sexy outfit on the bed?" I responded, "We're not going anywhere. I'm going." "Really? Where are you going in that outfit without me? And where are the kids?" I had a bad feeling. "The kids are spending the night with friends." Revised version. "I don't know exactly where my date will take me, but I probably won't get home until tomorrow morning." "What do you mean your date, and you're not coming back until morning?" That's exactly what I said. "I have a date tonight, and if everything goes according to plan, I'll spend the night with him," she remarked with confidence. "You're crazy. What the hell do you think? I'm going to put up with this for a second. Screw it. If you want to go out and have some fun, you can wait until the divorce is final. Stop being stupid. There's not going to be a divorce. I'll just do it once, and then it's back to business as usual. I need this night. We've been married for 17 years, and I just need to go out one time to prove to myself that I'm still attractive to other guys. If you really love me, you'll let me have this night, and it won't even be noticeable. If you really loved me, you wouldn't even think about it. I love you, but I need this. I'm getting older, and I need to feel like I'm still attractive to other men, younger men, in particular. Clarence is about 10 years younger than me. He's been flirting with me for the past 6 months, and I've decided to finally accept his proposal. It's just one night of sex to convince myself that I'm still a sexy woman, attractive to other men. It's just a confidence boost for me. I've noticed a few wrinkles and a couple of gray hairs starting to show through, and I need a boost to my ego. I don't need it, and I'm not going to put up with it. Remember that part of the wedding vows about renouncing everything else? If you do that, you are breaking your vows. Don't be silly. It's just a matter of one night. After I get home, I'll never do it again, I promise. Are you stupid, or is it you who believes I am stupid after you broke the vows you made to me in front of God, family, and friends? Do you really think I'm going to believe your simple promise made in private? Simply put, if you go through with this, it's over between us. You're out the door, and I'm going to see a lawyer as soon as possible. Don't be an idiot. There will be no divorce. I'm going to come home and be the loving and devoted wife I've always been. If you try to divorce me, I will fight as long and hard as I can. In the end, you will lose the house, most of your assets, and I will get full custody of the children. Furthermore, I will do everything I can to ruin your dating life and place all the blame for the breakup of the family on you. I will do everything I can to make your children hate you." In the end, I was shocked by her words. "You claim to love me, and yet you do all this to me." "Damn right, I love you, but if you try to divorce me, I will fight you. I don't want to lose you, so I'm just giving you the consequences of your actions. Look, I told you I only need one night to prove that I'm still attractive and sexy. Yeah, what about in a few more years? How about the next time you start thinking you're still getting older and wonder if you can still be attracted to a younger man? I promise that won't happen, and yes, I overheard some gossip. I admit I'm curious, but it's just going to be sex. There will be no love. You have nothing to worry about him taking me away from you. Like I said, it's just a one-time thing to get it all out of your head. Maybe I'll even learn a few things to diversify our sex life. A couple of new tricks will liven up our lovemaking. If you go through with this, I've already told you the consequences of your actions. If you call him right now and cancel, we can go through marriage counseling and try to save our marriage. Don't be silly. We'll be fine. If you really insist on counseling to cure your bruised ego, we can talk about it when I get back tomorrow." With those words, she continued to get ready for her date. I changed into jeans and a t-shirt, then left the room. After a while, she came downstairs dressed in the clothes she had laid out on the table. She had a small clutch in her hands and was examining herself in the mirror by the door. I sat in my chair in the living room. A car horn honked outside. "He's here. I have to go now." "I'll see you in the morning," she murmured, putting her hand on my head and blowing me a kiss. I drew back from her, turning my head. In the end, she gave the air a kiss. She got back to her feet and scowled at me. She turned and walked for the door, saying, "Fine, let it be like this once." You calm down, and everything will go back to normal. I asked her one final thing. If you walk out that door, it's over between us. You'd better think twice about throwing 17 years of marriage away, I replied. She opened the door and went out, turning to face me. I'm not throwing anything away. Like I said, I'll be back, and everything will fall into place, she answered. Yes, I broke down in tears over losing both my marriage and the lady I had been in a committed relationship with for the previous 20 years, 2 years of dating exclusively, 1 year of marriage, and 1 year of engagement. How she could do this to me was beyond me. She never showed me any signs of dissatisfaction. She never expressed a desire for more during our regular sexual encounters. If she had asked for more, I would have happily provided it to her. Nothing brought us to arguments. Of course, like any couple, there were arguments from time to time, but we still talked things out and came to an understanding. I knew exactly what I would do in the event that she pursued it. After a half hour, I eventually got up and headed to work. I suppose I bided my 30 minutes for her to regain consciousness and return. That obviously did not occur. I made my way upstairs and started working on my plan. At the time, it was the best I could do, but it wasn't a very good strategy. With 4 bedrooms, the master bedroom, Carly's room, Josh's room, and a sizable guest bedroom, it was a reasonably spacious home. In reality, the guest bedroom served as a second master bedroom with its own bathroom. When my family or her visited, we made use of it. We also used it for sleepovers with the kids, but now it's turned into my makeshift bedroom. I moved everything from our old bedroom to my new one in roughly 2 hours. I wasn't deluded about the outcome of our divorce. It was a faultless state. This indicates that feminists who despise men wrote the state's divorce laws. In essence, the husband lost out unless the woman was found guilty of a major felony and given a minimum 10-year prison sentence. Even if the husband was a totally innocent victim, it made no difference. In the end, the husband was left with all the debts while the wife received the house, the children, and alimony, which was once known as child support. He receives the mine, and she receives the gold mine. Once I was settled into my new makeshift apartment, I went to the home office and used our internet banking. I had opened up another account in my name a few years prior. I only did it to buy her gifts and surprise her. There was no evil intent behind it. Our money was shared by both of us, and on multiple occasions when she would check in, she would happen to see a purchase I had made specifically for her. Obviously, neither her birthday nor Christmas were surprises. I therefore made a new account in my name just so I could purchase things for her without telling her ahead of time. I now chose to use that account for something else. Although she was aware of it, she was unable to access it. I started by moving precisely half of our savings and checking accounts to my personal account. I then paid off and canceled all of our credit cards with the remaining funds in the joint account. After that, I made multiple fresh cards in my name alone. Yes, I should have paid everything before sending the funds, but I reasoned that it would be better to pay the court's order than to attempt to get money from her. On Monday mornings when I came to work, I would transfer my direct deposits from work to my personal account. On Monday, I would also need to give our broker a call and request that we divide our investments. After doing what I could, I got up to my room for the night and had another glass of Jim Beam on the rocks. As I was getting ready for bed, I completed my drink. I didn't get much sleep that night. I was used to sharing a bed with my wife, so it seemed empty when she wasn't there. After that, my mind simply refused to stop. I kept thinking about what I could have done to stop it. Had I made an effort to persuade her to stay? Had I put her in a physical restraint? Take a baseball bat to this asshole's car? A firearm? Was going to jail worth it? The night was really lengthy. I slept occasionally, but not too often. When the light began to come through the window, I made the decision to get up at last. I decided to take a shower because I was still weary, if for no other reason than to assist myself wake up completely. I walked downstairs, changed into jeans and a t-shirt, then took a shower and shaved. I read the paper while having breakfast and a few glasses of coffee. When Kayla returned home, it was 9 in the morning. I was browsing at rental apartments while seated at my desk in my office. I scheduled an appointment on Monday afternoon using their online scheduling after doing some research on the lawyers. She joyfully said, "Good morning, sweetheart. I'm home as promised," as she walked into the house. I chose to ignore her throughout the night, and while I sipped my coffee this morning, my rage at what she had done had been growing. I came to the realization this morning that I had done nothing to merit her disdain. I also came to the realization that her actions were solely her responsibility and that there was nothing I could have done to stop them. She would have just gone on the date again if I had been able to stop her last night. Many individuals believe that you can never truly stop loving someone. They might be correct, but you have the power to change that love into hatred. Rather than hatred, apathy is the antithesis of love. Emotion is still there with hate. In many cases, marriage counselors can restore love back into a marriage that is in danger of failing. There is absolutely no chance if there is indifference. My wife has transformed from the love I had for her before I came home to hate. It was shockingly simple to complete. I just needed to concentrate on how disrespectful she was being to me. I followed it up with her threats to hurt me if I didn't cooperate. She also showed no concern for my emotions. I could concentrate on all of this for a few hours. She called out to me, searching the entire house for me. "There you are," she said, opening the door to my office. "Honey, where are you?" "I'm home, just like I told you." "I even cleaned myself up before I came to your house," she said. She walked up to my desk and said, "I'm back, so now things can go back to normal." She came around the table and gave me a kiss and an embrace. I gave her a back shove. Her eyes widened in amazement as she said, "Keep your filthy, sick lips off me. God only knows what they've touched and what filth has been in your mouth." In all the years I had known her, I had never talked to her like that. "You need to go to the clinic and get a full set of STD tests. I want to see a notarized clean report from you." Too much, maybe? Did I not care? I proceeded before she could reply. No, I saw her countenance turn from shock to rage. I hoped she would see her mistake and turn from it. "I see you're still coping with your bruised ego. I'm going to go up to our room and take a nap. I've had a long night, and I want to get some rest. I hope you've calmed down by now, and we can talk later. I expect a full apology from you for your rudeness this morning." After saying those words, she left the room. I couldn't help but smile, knowing that she will soon be back. I also didn't have to feel let down. She moved back, and I heard her cry, "What the hell did you do?" She stormed back into my office, muttering, "Where are your clothes? Where are all your toiletries? What the hell do you think you're doing?" Calmly, "What do you mean?" I inquired. "All my things are exactly where they should be." "What are you talking about?" "Your closet is empty, your drawers are empty, your corner of your dressing table is empty." "What do you mean everything is lying where it should be, like I said?" "My clothes hang neatly in my closet or folded, and in my dresser. My toiletries are neatly in their places in the bathroom." She cried out in desperation, "That's not true. I just told you that your things are not in our bedroom." "I see your problem now. You see, you still mistakenly think your bedroom is our bedroom. I just told you that all of my stuff is where it belongs, in my bedroom." "You mean?" "Yes, I told you I wouldn't put up with it, so I moved out of your bedroom. I'm going to live in my new bedroom until I find an apartment and move out." I considered alerting her about our financial situation, but I decided to let her work it out on her own. Furthermore, it would have been counterproductive to spoil the surprise before I had resolved the investments. She squinted her eyes in frustration. "We'll discuss this later. I'll give you a week to recover, and then I'll put everything back in place, and we'll go back to normal." I brushed it off and turned back to the computer. "Not until I get a notarized report that you're free of all diseases," I said. I spent the majority of the day in my office. The children returned home before dawn. For a moment I worried how long before they realized something was wrong. I completed the paperwork, scheduled a Tuesday appointment to view a few apartments that caught my eye. I then printed our bank statements because I needed them for my lawyer's Monday meeting. I had no illusions about selling the house, but I reasoned that figuring out its worth may help resolve the conflict. Critically, I would be due half the share's value from her. Thoughtful, yes, but nonetheless. I investigated our state's divorce laws for the remainder of the day. I knew I was going to lose, but at least I knew that. If nothing else, I had to have a sense of how much it would have helped me come up with a strategy, Carrie replied, sticking her head through the door. "Daddy, she did the best she could. She got dressed, put on makeup, and styled her hair the way I liked. She spent a good deal of time in the kitchen that day preparing my favorite meal." When I entered the kitchen, Kayla came over to me and held out a glass of wine. "Okay, sweetie, thank you," she said with a radiant smile. It was obvious what her plan was, to kill me with kindness and show me what I would lose if I didn't accept what she did. "I poured you a glass of wine," she said, reaching out to kiss me, and I could see the hurt in her eyes as I drew away. I took the glass from her, went to the sink, and emptied the wine into the glass, setting it on the counter. Next, I took a tumbler out of the cabinet, added a few ice cubes, and poured a few fingers of Jim Beam. That the children seated at the table would not notice this was beyond the pale. I walked over to the table, sat down, and began to talk to the children, not even looking up at my wife. Dinner was obviously a stretch. I did my best to keep the kids talking, but it was pretty obvious that we were in big trouble. It did not help that I did not even put anything on my plate, much less eat anything. These were my favorite dishes, but I passed the bowls and plates around without even looking at them. I just kept trying to strike up a conversation with the children while I sipped my drink. "Dad, will you not eat anything at all?" questioned Josh. After the most awkward supper in human history, I simply got up, refilled my glass, and strolled back to my office without even trying to help clear the table. Finally, "No, not hungry," was all I said in response. About 30 minutes later, I closed my computer, got the keys to my truck, and left the house for dinner at a nice, quiet restaurant, stopping along the way for a few drinks at a bar. By the time I got home, it was getting late, and I noticed that Kayla's bedroom light was still on, so I made sure to make a loud enough noise for her to hear, locked the door, and then slid a chair under the handle. I heard her trying the knob and then knocking as I was getting ready for bed, and after she gave up after trying for about 5 minutes, I got up early the next morning and decided that today would be soccer day, with 3 games scheduled, morning, afternoon, and evening. Yes, I knew I had things to do this weekend, but I chose to put them off, telling myself, screw it, I'm not going to live here for long, so Kayla can just delegate it to someone else. I had almost finished my coffee when Carly entered the kitchen, and I was about to start preparing an omelet for breakfast. "Hey, my love, omelet?" I inquired. Carly finished her omelet while I cooked Josh's, and then I heard Kayla in the hallway, so I poured the last cup of coffee into my glass and turned off the kettle. "Sure, Dad, thank you," she said, taking her juice and sitting down at the table while I started to prepare the food. Josh arrived a few minutes later. Shuffling as she entered, she grabbed a cup from the cabinet and glanced at the empty pot, saying, "You couldn't even leave a cup for me?" She fixed her gaze on me. "This saucepan is right here. You're a skilled chef." "I see. So, are you preparing scrambled eggs?" "I've just completed making them." I put one on Josh's plate, used the last of what I had prepared for him, and even put all the ingredients away before responding, saying, "To hell with her." Just before noon, I was watching the morning game in the living room after taking care of the kids, when Kayla came in carrying a plate and a bottle of beer, which she placed on the coffee table in front of me. She said, "I brought you lunch and beer so you won't miss any games," with a smile on her face. I kicked the plate and bottle off the table and onto the floor without turning to face her, and she stood there looking shocked. The commercial then started, so I got up and went to the kitchen to get myself a beer. Yes, I know you're all crying about me spilling the entire drink on the floor and accusing me of abusing booze. It would have been a waste anyhow because I wasn't planning to drink any of the beverages she brought me. I didn't tidy up after her, sorry. She carried it in against her will so she could tidy it up. I was going to be out of here soon enough, so I didn't really care if she ruined the carpet. "We need to discuss this," Kayla started. "Silence up, let's play," I answered. "The kids have already noticed, so please, for God's sake, change your attitude." "Okay, I'm sure they'll find out when I move out anyhow." "Oh, please settle down. There won't be a divorce, and you're not moving out," she said as she turned to leave. Carly and Josh came in together, sat down on the couch facing me, and it started closer to noon. At least they waited till after the break. "Dad, how are things between you and Mom going?" Carly got going. "As you may already be aware, your mother and I are divorcing. It is unrelated to either of you. This is only between your mother and me. We both love you." "However, why?" questioned Josh. "Because of something your mother did that I find unacceptable." I informed her how I felt about it, but she still went ahead and did it. She has no regrets at all about that. "You mean Friday night, when she went on her date?" Carol Lee inquired. "Are you aware of this?" I was taken aback. "Yes, Mom informed us that you weren't very happy about it." "That's right, she didn't deceive me." "No, she didn't. She claimed it wasn't cheating because she had informed you about it in advance." Josh said, "That was the only time she did something like that. She didn't do it by sneaking behind your back." "Yes, Father. Furthermore, it was only one evening during the 20 years that you dated and were married," Carly said. Honestly, I was taken aback. The fact that my father's girlfriend didn't even try to comprehend my situation additionally upset me. She adopted her mother's stance and refused to even consider my viewpoint. Really, wouldn't she not even think about having sex with me if she truly loved me? Come on, Dad, it was just once, and she promised she'd never do it again. All right, let's talk about her commitments now. She promised me something serious a little more than 17 years ago. In front of God, our family, and friends, she made that promise. She made a commitment to abandon everyone else. This was a pledge with no exceptions. This pledge was only to last until death do us part. We are all still alive, in case you missed it. How can I believe the promises she makes to me in private if she can so easily betray this solemn vow made in public? Josh considered going into law, hoping he'd do much better. Yes, but you also vowed to be there for her in good times and bad, he said to himself. You're correct. The issue is that your mother breached the agreement by violating her commitment, which freed me from my obligations. Well, we just don't understand why you would want to break up your family over one single night, Carly responded. Why do you think that I'm ruining the family? Why am I held accountable for her actions? Mom wants to go on and put everything behind her, but she is not leaving. It's you who's leaving and getting all worked up over it. Carly argued, if you go, you will ruin the family. After that, nothing changed. I tried to explain my position, but they would not listen. They were not interested in my opinion. Kayla had been talking down to them all day, filling their heads with her nonsense, telling them that Mom had done something that she really needed to do, and that Dad didn't love her and the kids enough to meet her needs. She convinced them that Daddy's little male ego caused him to abandon them all and caused the family to fall apart, and that it was Daddy's fault for not giving Mommy the one tiny thing she truly needed to be happy, instead of Dad choosing to make everyone suffer because of his stubbornness. Dinner was cooking, I could smell it. It was another one of my favorite meals, and I just sat and watched the post-game show, waiting for the game to start that night. It was getting late. In 20 minutes, Josh came in and said dinner was ready, and I just got up and grabbed my truck keys and went to the door. Where are you heading? The table is ready for dinner, inquired Josh. I intend to watch the game in the sports bar. There, I'll grab something to eat, I answered. But Mom fixed. After the game, I'll be back. However, I anticipate staying here for a while after it's over. After the game, I sat down and enjoyed their delicious burger and seasoned fries, along with a pretty good beer. Since I could only have one beer every quarter, it was plenty for me to drive home, and it was only 5 minutes away. When I got home, everyone had already gone to bed, so I just went to my bedroom, locked and bolted the door, and went to bed. To my surprise, the plate and bottle on the coffee table had been put away. I left the house early on Monday morning, making it to the office before anyone else was awake. I called my broker, explaining that I was going through a divorce and asked him to split all of our investments in half. He created a new account in my name only and transferred half of our investments into it. Next, I went to Human Resources, asking them to remove Kayla's name from the retirement account and designate Carly and Josh as my heirs. I also gave them the details of my new bank account so they could transfer my paycheck there. Finally, I told my employer that I was going through a divorce and that I would require time off to attend meetings, court dates, etc., and he was okay with it. My lawyer confirmed for me what I already knew. There was a slim chance of obtaining custody, but only if the kids were old enough for the court to take their wishes into consideration. Since I hadn't heard from them since yesterday, I wasn't going to hold my breath, so I asked him to start working on the paperwork and asked her to start work on Monday. After work, I didn't even bother driving home because Monday Night Football was on, so I just stopped by the sports bar. 3 tacos for $1, which I ate 3 of during the first half and 3 more during the second half. I ignored Kayla's phone calls and texts, answering Carly's and letting her know where I was, which was met with a very unpleasant reaction from her. After the game, I just walked into my office, closed the door, and went upstairs to my room, only to discover that everyone had gone to bed. I got up early on Tuesday morning and left the house before anyone else was awake. Work went well, and I took the day off to look at apartments. I found a nice 2-bedroom apartment and made a deposit. I would be able to move in on Saturday. I went to the thrift store and bought a couch, table, and chairs. They were going to be delivered Saturday afternoon. I decided I liked the bed I had been using, so I was going to pick it up along with everything in my home office. When I arrived home, they were already eating dinner, which was fine because I wasn't going to eat anyway. Instead, I went to the refrigerator and got everything I needed to make a large sandwich. Dad, come on, what's up with you like this? Carly yelled as she walked into my office. To put it plainly, Carly, your mother cheated on me. She threw it in my face and showed me that she had no regard at all. That is not something I will tolerate. I told her exactly what would happen if she followed through on it. Even though she knew what would happen, she went for it. This cannot be the reason you are ruining your family. Come on, it was simply sex. There was no big deal. Carly, you will one day tie the knot. Imagine your reaction if your spouse revealed to you one evening that he had gone on a date with a more attractive, younger lady and planned to spend the night with her. I hope I loved him enough to get over it, even though I'm sure I wouldn't particularly enjoy it if he pledged to come back to me only once. Besides, it wouldn't look like cheating if he told me about it beforehand. Yes, that's correct. Please do me a favor, when you recite your vows at your wedding, gaze directly into your fiancé's eyes. Imagine how the love in his eyes will turn to pure destruction when you tell him you're off having fun with another man, right when you're looking into his beautiful eyes and you're at the part about leaving everyone else behind. After saying that, I ignored her and resumed my work. The evening of Wednesday was an ambush. My folks were already home from work when I arrived. I got along really well with her parents, despite the fact that people always make fun of their in-laws. They embraced me into their family as the son they never had. Her dad, Charles, was just as obsessed with technology as I was. His fondness for Ford vehicles was the only issue. Okay, he had pretty awful choice in cars, but I could ignore that. His 1969 Mustang Fastback was in excellent shape. Yes, I had a great relationship with my parents. We were not one of those dysfunctional households where kids grow up hating their parents. They were always incredibly kind and supportive of me. Of course, there were differences, and they never hesitated to tell me when they believed I was wrong about something. Sometimes we just have to agree to disagree. So, I entered the house and discovered that the ambush had already been set. I was a little puzzled. I understood why her parents would be there. Obviously, they would be on her side. After all, she is their daughter. But what confused me was that my own parents were there. It felt unproductive for her. My parents would agree with me and be on my side. If she was trying to convince me to accept her infidelity, why would she invite someone who wouldn't be on her side and argue that I was right to divorce her over infidelity? You've probably guessed by now that it took me a few more minutes to comprehend. Tom, Charles began. I want you to know that Mary, Kayla's mother, and I are very disappointed in what Kayla did. That said, we think you are overreacting to it. Yes, she went and had sex with another man, and it was extremely disrespectful to you, especially the way she did it. But it was just one mistake. You two have been together for a total of 20 years. You have 2 wonderful children. Think about all of that. Surely, you can get over this little incident. You don't have to destroy your family over one mistake. A little mistake, really. It wasn't a tiny mistake. It wasn't an accidental stumble. It was a planned event. They presumably planned it at least a week in advance. Then she ambushes me an hour before she leaves, giving me no chance to react. It was an elaborate plan to fool me. My mom decided to intercede. She didn't cheat on you. She told you that first. First of all, you're right that she told me. She never asked. She just declared she was doing it, and I had no say in it. Even when I stated my significant objections, she didn't care. Speaking of what I stated, if she pursued it, I would guarantee it would happen. Tom, I understand your pain and anger, but please keep your family in mind, Father pleaded. Son, you are loved. We are here to support your recovery. However, consider what you'll do to your family. Kayla promises she won't do it again and she still loves you. We all believe that you can get through this with some work and counseling. Divvying up your family is not the solution. We brought you up to be a decent man. Maintaining the unity of your family requires you to step up. Avoid making a foolish decision that could damage your relationship with your family. Consider me and your mother. These are our grandchildren, and we will go to any lengths to maintain our bond with them. I stood there, dumbfounded, my parents clearly on her side, telling me that I had to put up with her cheating, but I couldn't take it any longer, so I turned and walked out of the room, toward my bedroom, closing the door behind Kayla as she tried to follow me. 10 minutes later, I changed into jeans, a casual shirt, and boots, and I left the living room and went out the front door without a word. They were still there, trying to talk to me, and I didn't even acknowledge them. I simply left the house, hopped in my truck, and headed to the sports bar for dinner and a few beers. Fortunately, when I returned about 4 hours later, everything had returned to normal, and my kids were still furious with me. It surprised me that Kayla had not realized that the credit cards were no longer functional, but I'm sure she will when she goes shopping on Saturday. I had been home for about an hour on a Friday night, sitting in my office sorting through stuff, figuring out exactly what I would take with me tomorrow and what I would put away later, when Kayla came in the door. She looked amazing, dressed in a see-through nightgown, stockings, a garter belt, and high-heeled shoes. Tonight, the kids will be sleeping somewhere else. It's time for you to go to bed with me and stop talking like this. All night long, I want you to make love to me. She murmured, I truly need you to take me back. After a minute of staring, I said, no, thank you. Furthermore, I haven't seen the clinic's report attesting to your lack of medical issues yet. Stop acting absurd. You must return to my bed. Nothing is getting accomplished with your tantrums. Come on, I need sex, I'm horny, she urged. Not even the tiniest curiosity. I'm going to have to contact Clarence again if you don't listen. Damn it, so what if it's a one-time thing? I answered back. It was a one-time incident, but if you continue to turn me down, you're the one driving me away to pursue other interests. Enjoy yourself while doing it. She virtually burned her tires as she rushed down the street. Let me know if you bring him here, she snarled before screaming out of the room, a trail of smoke emanating from her nose and ears. Since the house was empty, I grabbed a few things, took apart the bed, and loaded it and most of my clothes into the truck. I'll be sleeping on the couch in my office tonight. After I loaded everything I wanted to bring with me, I relaxed and had a Jim Beam on the rocks. I was at the leasing office early the next morning to pick up the apartment key. It took me a little while, but I eventually got everything out of the truck and into the apartment, with the help of a few kind neighbors. The couch wasn't the most comfortable one I'd ever slept on, but that was okay. Nothing was home when I got back, so I loaded the office furniture and desk with the help of the neighbor's teenage son. The computer, printer, and accessories went into the cabin, and I looked back at the living room and said, screw it, I'll take the chair too. My phone rang early this evening, and I answered it, thinking it was my daughter. I presume no one came home till tonight, or no one bothered to look in my office or spare bedroom. I'm shocked they didn't realize the chair was missing. Where are you, Daddy? May I ask? She inquired. I'm home, honey. No, it's not. Your chair is missing from the living room, the bed and dresser in the spare bedroom have been removed, and your office has been well cleaned. In addition, I searched all over and you're not here. Your truck is no longer here, she urged. You're accurate. I'm not present. For the time being, I live in an apartment. This house will suffice for the time being, but maybe after the divorce, I'll buy another one, I said. I can't believe you're acting so foolish, Dad. Geez. With disappointment, she replied, I thought you loved us. My dear, you are loved. I will and I always have. Just not to the point where you refuse to leave, I answered. You gave up on us. You're ruining the family, said she. The family was shattered by your mother. She went on the date even though I warned her that this is what would happen if she did. However, I believed she loved me too much to hurt me, and she believed you cared about her enough to go over it. All right, anything, I replied, and she hung up. It was a nightmare divorce. She fought it to the very end. She wanted me to pay for the counseling, but I refused, arguing that if she needed it, she should pay for it. It was one of the few arguments I won. What a waste of time. The counselor didn't like me much, probably because I told him that I was required to attend, even though the judge didn't specify that I had to. I endured all 12 sessions before the counselor gave up. She became so dependent on the useless, hilarious picture in the garage, which she detested, that she fought over everything. The Bud Light, for example. I accidentally left in the office. She hated it, but it had been on my desk since college. It was the centerpiece around which she was going to redesign the office. Yeah, she was only doing it to make my divorce as difficult as possible. All this time, she made sure I didn't see the kids as much as possible. Eventually, the judge granted the divorce. I had to keep paying half the mortgage. She, of course, kept the house. Child support was $2,000 a month, but I got visitation every Wednesday night and every weekend. What really pissed me off was the $1,000 a month for 5 years of spousal maintenance. It was canceled if she remarried during that time. I wasn't going to hold my breath. I learned that she had moved Clarence in with her before the divorce was even finalized. So, yeah, half of my paycheck went to her. I cashed out some of my investments and bought a small house that was in dire need of renovation. At least I got it cheap, even on a 1-acre lot. Fortunately, I was able to get all my tools out of the garage a week after moving in. I refused to even discuss them. I had most of them before we even met. When she pushed, I talked about all of her jewelry, expensive clothes, and shoes. The house had electricity, gas, and running water. There was a roof, and the walls were standing. That was enough for me. I moved into the house and started working on it in the evenings and weekends. Yes, visitation. Yes, I was supposed to have visitation. I did visit a few times. It was a goddamn disaster. Kayla was doing everything she could to prevent it. The kids were busy. They went away for the weekend with friends. Funny how it was always my weekend and not hers. Oh, Kayla has dance practice on Wednesday, Josh has an important test on Thursday and needs to study for it. The few times I was able to visit the kids on Wednesday night, they treated me with hostility. They still blame me for everything, even when I explained my point of view to them. When the opposition literally holds them captive the entire time and I only occasionally have an hour or two, it's a losing battle. After the third time, they bluntly told me they didn't want to see me anymore. Yes, I could force them, but what would be the point? Forcing them to see me would only cause more resentment. I sent them gift cards and letters for birthdays and Christmas. They all came back unopened. I continued to send monthly checks. I saw them being cashed, but I never heard a word. Graduation? I guess they graduated, but I didn't hear anything about it. I sent a registered letter letting them know about the college funds I'd organized for them. In response, I heard no thanks. Kayla basically set my kids on me, just like she promised. I focused on work, the house, and only that. I didn't go anywhere or do anything. It's amazing how much money can be saved doing things this way. I responded, "Hi, Mom," as she answered the phone, as if everything wasn't awful enough. "How are you?" "As you might expect, everything is going well," she replied with a smile. "Anyhow, nothing concerning Thanksgiving has come to my attention. Will you be hosting it once more this year? Mom, are you still here?" There was silence on the other end. I inquired, "Huh? That does seem a little strange." "Yes, we will, but Kayla, her parents, and their children are attending the celebration. She's introducing the new man into her life as well. Simply said, we thought it would be too embarrassing for you to be here." "Really, Mom? You're ditching your own son for Thanksgiving and inviting my ex-wife and her boyfriend instead? We want to keep a close relationship with our grandchildren. The kids are still upset with you for leaving them, and your presence with Kayla and her new man would only make things worse for everyone. Furthermore, you are to blame for this. Rather than trying to break up the family, you ought to have been trying to keep it together. Would you mind coming to see us on Christmas Eve? Your father and I will celebrate Christmas Day at Kayla's house, but we can celebrate with you the day before," I muttered, cutting off the conversation. I watched Die Hard on Christmas Eve at home, ignoring the many calls and texts my mom sent asking where I was. I wasn't in the mood for the holidays. Instead, I was just staring at the packages I sent to my kids, which were returned to my doorstep a week ago yesterday. 5 years later, I received a wedding announcement. Kayla had married Clarence the weekend after I paid my last installment of maintenance. Josh had turned 18 a year early, so I was done with child support. I was now totally free of my ex-family and my obligations to them, which I celebrated by getting wasted. I'm not really proud of it, but to hell with it. I put my all out and gave them all the love I was capable of, but they rejected me and treated me like crap. Screw them. Now that all my obligations to that and her 2 ungrateful offspring had been fulfilled, I decided to just put them out of my mind as much as possible. They obviously didn't want any relationship with me, so I would just forget about them as soon as possible and move on with my life. Well, except for one thing that always bothered me, I had to keep paying half the mortgage on the house. Of course, it ended when Josh graduated, but my name was still on the deed. I think Kayla was under the mistaken impression that she owned the house. The divorce said she could only live there until the kids graduated from high school. Now all bets were off. I was entitled to half of the property, and it was a pretty big property. I contacted my attorney to start with. When we got divorced, the house was appraised at about $300,000 and the equity was about $200,000. That was 5 years ago. Since then, we have been paying our mortgage faithfully, and property values in our area have increased significantly. After doing a little research online, I calculated that the appraised value was now about $500,000, and the equity was $450,000. Yes, we only had $50,000 left on the promissory note. Why did I do it? Well, for the money, of course. Who could use an extra $250,000? Besides, it would piss Kayla off. She adored this house, and having to give me a penny for anything made her furious. And I was eager for any payback for what she'd done. It would also reimburse me for all the house maintenance and mortgage payments I had to make for her. After a week or so, the caller said, "Tom, what the hell is going on?" Well, Kayla, not much is happening here. I'm simply working and doing repairs to the house I purchased. What's the matter with you? To be honest, I'm shocked that you gave me a call to check on me. Ultimately, this is your first conversation with me following the divorce. This is not a call to see how you're doing. I'm calling to inquire as to why the realtor visited my home to inspect it and obtain my consent to sign the sales agreement. Oh, I see. Given that both of our names are on the title, that ought to be obvious. Clearly, she needs your signature to complete the transaction. What transaction? I will not be selling this house since I adore it. When will you be sending me a check for my share of the capital, then? Good attempt. The divorce awarded me the house. No, you can only occupy the house while Josh is still a high school student. That was a month ago. We can now choose to sell it and divide the money equally, or you can purchase my share outright. If you think I'm going to give you $100,000 for a house I own by right, you're out of your mind. That indicates that I'm not crazy, then. I'm not requesting $100,000. 5 years ago, you could have completed that. Now, my share is $225,000 because the house has roughly $450,000 in equity. Let's round that figure to $250,000 once you account for all the pricey furniture you simply had to have. You're insane. You won't get a cent from me. With a loud cry, she ended the call. Yes, I replied, laughing as she hung up the phone. Yeah, I said, but it was worth it to see her face when the judge ruled in my favor a few months later. I even convinced the judge to make her pay her legal fees and my lawyer for bringing her to court over something that should have been settled out of court. The house appraised for more than I had estimated, including the value of the furniture. I got $775,000. They bought me out instead of selling. I later learned that they did so primarily with Clarence's money, but more about that later. After putting the house in order and building a decent-sized store behind it, I decided to have some fun with the engine because it was just going to be a toy and not something I would drive every day. I found an old, badly maintained 1972 Chevy pickup truck online and decided to take it apart, clean it up, and completely repaint it. After the paint and bodywork were finished, I tackled the running gear. The rear differential was still in good shape, but I rebuilt it anyway because it had to be able to handle the power I was going to put through it. The transmission was a Borg-Warner T10 4-speed manual. It was fast stuff. I had to send it to a machine shop to bore the cylinders, connecting rod, and cam, new forged crankshaft, 10/1 pistons, nice heavy cam, heads ported and polished. Then double spring valves were put in, and a supercharger to bring it all up to speed. Yeah, I'd probably run more gas stations than tire shops, and I'd run very few gas stations. I checked the valve covers, polished the aluminum on the supercharger, and used steel-braided hoses. It almost required sunglasses to open the hood. The first time I hit the road, I almost wrecked it. I was driving down the highway and decided to punch it. Big mistake. The rear tires blew out instantly. I barely managed to keep the car in a straight line before I let off the gas. Remember, take it slow on the gas pedal. After that, I started driving more carefully. A few weeks later, I saw an ad for a car show open to the public. Thinking it would be fun, I filled out the form and paid the entry fee. When the day came, I loaded up the '72 Chevy and drove to the park. I registered and got my spot. As I was setting up my car, I noticed a very nice 1968 GTO parked next to me. I set up my shade structure in the area behind the truck. A couple of chairs and a refrigerator completed my setup. Then I noticed attractive red-headed girls setting up chairs behind the goat. Yes, I said redheads, plural. There were 2 of them. One looked about my age, and the other was about 10 years old, probably still a schoolgirl. There were 2 very important things I didn't notice. I didn't see a boy with them, and I didn't see anything on the 3rd finger of the older woman's left hand. Of course, I looked closer. Good morning. Hi, thanks. I like your car, I remarked, beaming as they both looked up from their books. The older one answered, thank you. I like your truck too. How many of these events have you attended? It's my first time using one. Yes, I have attended auto events in the past, but just as a spectator. I'm taking part in it. For the first time. By the way, my name is Tom, and this is my daughter and I's 3rd participation, I remarked. It has been presented by my ex on multiple occasions. This is Jenny, my daughter, and my name is Marie, she answered. So, when you're finished, would you 2 please come sit in the shade with me? I have a cooler full of drinks, and I could use any information about these shows I can get. We ended up spending most of the day here. Once in a while, we would get up and talk to someone about our cars, but it was a very enjoyable day. No, I didn't win any awards, but I still had fun. I found out that she divorced her husband 3 years ago because she caught him cheating. He was cheating with his boss's wife. She made a deal with him. She would give him all the videos if he would rewrite the GTO to her. She told me it would hurt him, and she wanted him to keep his job so he could continue to pay her alimony and maintenance. It was a double win for her. Besides, his boss was an asshole, and she didn't care at all about his wife tooting his horn. Jenny was also friendly and joined in the conversation. She told me that she was very angry at her father for his cheating. She has nothing to do with him anymore. We were having such a good time that I didn't want it to end. As the show was winding down, I suggested they have dinner at Red Lobster a couple of blocks away. They agreed, and we drove there. I didn't really want to be sad, but they asked and told me their story. I listed the highlights. I told them that my kids had with my wife and no longer had anything to do with me. You mean she cheated, and your children blame you for divorcing her? Marie put her hand on my shoulder and said, I'm so sorry for you, Tom. Yes, I tried to explain to them, but by then, she'd already sicked them on me, as Jenny was left speechless. You're such a good guy, and you don't deserve anything like this, she said earnestly. Choosing to shift the topic to something more agreeable, we ended up talking and laughing for an additional hour. It seemed like we had a genuine connection, so we exchanged numbers, and Marie agreed to see me again. As they were leaving, I noticed Jenny giving me a big smile, a wink, and 2 thumbs up, indicating that she was okay with me seeing her mother again. Thus, Marie and I reconnected the following weekend. I called and asked, and she enthusiastically agreed to dinner and dancing. After 2 more dates, I invited them both over to my house and cooked them dinner. After my divorce, I learned how to cook pretty well food network, a few YouTube videos, and a lot of trial and error. My lasagna turns out really good, so I settled on that. They seemed to like it. They really liked my house. But I overheard Marie telling her daughter that it definitely needed a feminine touch. I wouldn't have argued if I had been asked. I kissed her on the cheek as I walked her to the door. I knew it was rude, but I couldn't stop eating. When I finally had to apologize to them for making a pig out of myself, they just laughed and asked why I was apologizing, which is the best compliment you can give a woman who loves to cook. Marie taught me that Jenny was almost as good as she was. The next weekend, I was invited to visit them. Marie cooked in such a way that my feeble efforts were shamed. 2 weekends later, I took Marie out to dinner and then to a dance club. After we had been dancing for a while, to the beat of the slow song, we leaned over and whispered in my ear, "Take me home." I was taken aback, thinking that we were having a great time, and now she wanted to go home. I pulled back to look at her, and she must have noticed my expression and started laughing. "Ah, you silly man, I meant take me to your house." Well, I'm not sure I could have kept the tires on the road if I had driven home in the 72. Yeah, I went ahead and made her breakfast before driving her home. I received another double thumbs up for that. A couple of months later, I asked, and she replied. The wedding was a straightforward civil ceremony officiated by a judge. They moved into my house immediately following the ceremony, and Jenny even began referring to me as Daddy. It was a wonderful life, full of arguments and disagreements. After all, Jenny was a teenager and I was the head of the household, but we got along just fine. She respected me, and her mom loved me just as much as I loved her. A year or 2 later, I received an unexpected call from a number I didn't recognize. "Hello," I answered, answering the phone. "Hi, Daddy," a happy-sounding female voice said. "Charlie?" "Yes, it's me, Daddy, and I have some exciting news. Hey, it's great to hear from you. Perhaps you two could be repairing your relationship? I'm getting married." "That's amazing, honey. I'm so happy for you." "Well, honey, of course it's one of the greatest honors for a father to walk his daughter down the aisle. I want you at my wedding." "Oh no, Clarence will be walking me down the aisle and paying for the wedding. I've also set up a wedding fund for you. I really want you to be there, but you won't be sitting in the front pew because it will be very awkward for you and Mom to sit together." "Clarence? Do you mean the scoundrel your mother used to cheat on me?" "Look, Dad, I'm trying to mend our relationship, and I wanted you to be at my wedding." "Did she really marry that piece of crap?" In addition, she and Clarence began seeing one another more frequently after you left, fell in love, and were married. "Actually, it's your fault." "Well, it appears that you still believe your mother did nothing wrong. If you hadn't left us, she and Clarence would never have dated. I therefore have 2 reasons why I will not be able to attend the event. Firstly, I can't support a marriage that I know will end in divorce. Like your mother cheated on me, you will probably cheat on your husband as well. He will kick your ass to the curb as soon as he finds out, if he is someone I approve of in any manner. Second, you have just transferred the last major honor bestowed upon my father from me to a dirty witch who conned a married woman. That demonstrates once more what a shallow, conceited. You've transformed. Okay, well, if that's how you're going to be, then forget about seeing your grandkids at all if you raise them that way. Dad, Mom's right, you really are an ass. Click. And that was my daughter's last words to me as I hung up the phone. Well, so much for any possibility of a relationship with my ex-daughter-in-law. I still truly don't want anything to do with them. I rebuilt a 350 engine, which was just marginally more powerful than the stock engine, since I wanted it to be more drivable. I was so focused on getting my phone back that I failed to realize Jenny had come home from around the street. Charlie, I was furious with my dad. He had the audacity to speak to me in that manner when I was trying to reach him. He is to blame for our family's disintegration. He threw everything back in my face when I attempted to be pleasant and asked him to my wedding. I was hopeful that at last he would own up to what he had done to our family. My phone rang when I lowered my eyes. I didn't know the number, but such kinds of calls had been common during the wedding planning. Greetings? Hello, is it Carly Williams there? Indeed, how may I assist you? You may quit being a cast iron to my dad and stop calling him. He's the greatest man I've ever met, and he doesn't deserve to be called and reminded of the pitiful leftovers of humanity that you are by a foolish, pampered whore like you. You and your family are a waste of precious oxygen, I promise. What on earth are you? Jenny Williams is my name. I am your sibling. I was adopted by your ex-dad, whom my mom married. I have the utmost love for him, and I would never consider treating him badly or disrespectfully. You are a disgrace to all daughters. I am well aware of the events that transpired. Your mother completely disregarded her husband by going on a date and having an affair with another man. The most depressing aspect of it all is how indifferent you seem to be. Let me tell you that when my mother found out that my biological father had cheated on her, she immediately kicked him out. You can be sure that I would have assisted my dad in taking out my mom's ass with the other trash if she had ever cheated on him. Yes, he is the most honorable, kind, and compassionate man I have ever known, despite the fact that he is not my real father. I'm considering writing your mother a card to tell her how much of a fool she was to let him go. I wouldn't have his father at this moment if it weren't for her utter foolishness. And you may also tell your parents that they have another granddaughter, but I do not want a connection in the slightest with someone who would turn away my own son for a cheater and her betraying child. One last thing you can do for me is to imagine the moment your spouse decides to cheat on you while you recite your fictitious vows. Call me and let me know when he does cheat on you so I can make fun of you. Have a pathetic life, my dear. She hung up, and I just stared dumbfounded at my phone. I was shocked to hear that my father had gotten married. You would think he would have at least invited his kids to the wedding, and that I now had a younger sister. I also couldn't shake the strange thought that she looked a lot like me. Prior to Mom informing Josh and me that Dad was leaving and threatening to destroy the family over a tiny, insignificant thing, I assumed that Dad must have had a very good reason for doing this and assumed that I could probably live with him instead of Mom. However, Mom later explained that she was feeling fine and that she needed this small thing to regain her strength because, really, it was only a brief period of time compared to the length of their marriage, and even more so because Mom was willing to stay together and work things out, whereas Dad was the one who was being a pig-headed man and wouldn't even try. I was shocked at how disrespectful she was to me. She refused to listen to me when I tried to tell her that Dad had left us and that Mom was attempting to move on. It seemed as though she didn't give a damn that it was a one-time incident that should have been noticed given how long they had been together, and then she had the audacity to call me all these derogatory names even though she doesn't even know me. Clarence was going to lead me down the aisle. He'd been my support system for the previous few years, so why was Daddy so unhappy about this? I hadn't even spoken to Dad since Josh and... When my mom and both grandmothers came in a half hour later, still upset about those phone calls, I told him how upset we were about him leaving and that on top of that, Clarence was paying almost $20,000 for my wedding. I couldn't even imagine how many pennies my dad was able to set aside. Would it be enough? What's wrong, honey? May I ask? She inquired. Since I'm his only daughter, I figured he would want to attend my wedding, so I notified him about it and invited him to come. Maybe this would be the beginning of anything more, like a future relationship. Oh, that's so fantastic, Grandma Williams yelled. Is he coming? Since he contacted a few years ago regarding Thanksgiving, we have not heard from him. I exhaled. No, he got mad when I told him that Clarence was going to walk me down the aisle and that I thought it would be too awkward for him to sit in the front pew with Mom and Clarence. It's unfortunate. By now, I had assumed he would have given up his piggish habits. Well, if that's not bad enough, I found out 5 minutes later that I have a half-sister. What? It sounds like a soap opera, Granny Williams remarked. Yes, a few minutes after Dad hung up, I received a call from the female claiming to be Jenny Williams. It seems that Dad adopted her and wed her mother. On the phone, she wasn't very polite. The kindest thing she actually said was that she wanted to thank my mom for being foolish because else she wouldn't have such a wonderful father. I told them about the 2 phone calls. The vehemence with which Dad and Jenny had conversed over the phone astounded them. Tom got married, and we weren't invited to the wedding. He didn't even tell us about it, I responded. I have another granddaughter, Grandma Williams said to herself. It was finally the day of my wedding. I gave my father's words the fleeting thought, and for a split second, I regretted that he wouldn't be around on my big day. That was okay. I had tried to talk to him and he had turned me down. I dismissed it, thinking that it was a good day. I was getting married to the one person I would spend the rest of my life with, the man I truly loved. As he took my hand and we began our aisle walk to the wedding march, Clarence was beaming with joy. Looking at all of my friends and family, I was ecstatic. Josh was one of Bobby's groomsmen, and my grandparents were also present to share my big day. My eyes welled up with happy tears. I turned to face Bobby, who was standing in front of the priest and grinning at me. I noticed my mother proudly staring at me as we went by. She was also crying happy tears down her cheeks. Lifting my veil, Clarence gave me a kiss on the cheek and whispered, "Congratulations, baby girl." He then gave me to my future husband to hold. Something didn't sound right, but I couldn't put my finger on it at the time. The priest asked, "Who gives this bride away?" And Clarence answered, "Her mother and I." I got a weird feeling within. It did not take long for the priest to start the ceremony. With the love of my life, I met his gaze. I couldn't say it, so I repeated my vows, to have and to hold, in sickness and in health, in good times and bad, for richer, for poorer. Bobby's eyes were staring right into mine, and I was at a loss for words. All of a sudden, I recalled his phone conversation. Suddenly, while I was staring into my soulmate's eyes, I noticed that he was seeing someone else. The scene abruptly altered, and I found myself telling a broken man that I had slept with someone else while staring into his lifeless eyes. My mind raced with these images, and I spoke without thinking. I understand now. Even if I had previously felt that the public was watching us, it was nothing in comparison to how things felt right now. Bobby gave me a worried expression. I felt as like a weight had been removed from me, and I suddenly had the largest smile of my life. At last, I understand, I told Bobby. "Oh, that's really great, Carly." "But what did you suddenly realize?" inquired the man. "Everything, absolutely," I answered. Then I became earnest. "Bobby, do you really love me?" "Of course, I love you." "How can you even ask that?" "I have to ask this because I can't marry you today." The audience let out a shout of surprise, and I believe I felt a rush of air pass past me. "We'll still get married, but not today. This is wrong, and I have to make it right. I have to make everything perfect because this will be my one and only marriage." "Sweetheart, Bobby, what's wrong?" "With everything in me, I love you. I intend to wed you. I'll walk you through everything, and I'm sure you'll understand, but together, we must go put things right. We'll move everything to a different day and start organizing our nuptials. I can't see you abandoning me at the altar, not in a manner. Actually, I should bring you along." After saying that, I turned to face the visitors. "I'm sorry, but I just can't go through with this today. We are not canceling our wedding, we are just postponing it. We will let you all know when we set a new date. We understand if you decide not to come, but just think of the story you will be telling about today for years to come. Won't you want to come next time and see what happens next? In any case, to make up for your disappointment in any way, the reception hall must be ready. Everything is already paid for with non-refundable deposits, so why not take advantage of that? The bar is open, so eat, drink, dance, and be merry. Don't worry, Clarence will pay the bill." After saying that, I grabbed Bobby's hand and turned to head back down the aisle. All of a sudden, my mother was in the way of my departure, and Clarence was standing beside her. The fact that I had just thrown nearly $20,000 down the toilet did not appear to please him. I also observed that everyone's attention was now on this new conflict. Watching the next show at the venue was a stop for many who had gotten up to go to the reception. Clarence began screaming absurdities about how much money he'd wasted and how I was going to reimburse him for every penny of the prank I'd just done. After that, Mom's turn came. "Carly, what are you doing?" "Where are you going?" she inquired. "I'm correcting a mistake I made a few years ago." "What mistake?" "The biggest mistake of my life." The mistake I made when I listened to all that crap you were saying instead of helping Daddy kick your ass to the curb? The mistake I made when I blamed Daddy for the breakup of the family, while it was your own fault for cheating on him? Carly, I'm your mother. I'm not a monster. Once a cheater, always a cheater, Carly. How dare you? How dare I? I'm even ashamed that I even equaled you. It wasn't until I looked into Bobby's eyes while saying my vows that I woke up and realized what a horrible person you really are. Once a cheater, always a cheater. Looking into his eyes, I suddenly realized how awful it would be if he ever cheated on me. I realized how much I would hurt the man I loved if I ever cheated on him. I guess Dad was a good role model for me after all, but you sure weren't. Mom asked, panic flashing in her eyes. What do you mean? Really, Mom? Do you really think I don't know about your Wednesday workouts with Jim Davis, your personal trainer, that they're always at his apartment instead of the gym? It's funny that you only go to the gym to see Jim. How about the fact that Carlos, your pool guy, takes an extra hour every 2 weeks because he screws your brains out on the shower lounge after he cleans the pool? How about you gangbanging the landscaping crew every time after they finish their yard work? I've got some good video footage of me coming home early a couple of times in case you try to deny it. And let's not forget how you always tip Mario, your barber, by giving in the back room after every haircut. At least CL is your boss at work, and he doesn't have to worry about you cheating on him with your boss. Am I forgetting someone? Oh yeah, I almost forgot Alan Morris, your neighbor for the last 3 years. He's been coming over whenever his wife has a girls' night out. When I had finished spreading out her soiled clothes, her eyes shifted to Clarence. Considering that he was standing less than 2 feet away from me and that I had stated it loudly enough to be heard throughout the church, perhaps she hoped he had miraculously not heard. Clarence's expression was one of complete shock. I had a bad idea when I was staring at Clarence. Oh, and Clarence, before God and all these witnesses, I swear with the same commitment that my mother did when she made her wedding vows that I will pay you back the money you spent on this wedding. We all know how she keeps her vows, so you can fully expect me to honor this vow just as she honors hers. Yeah, he shouldn't hold his breath waiting for even a dime. Observing Mom preoccupied, I dragged Bobby along the aisle. I stopped briefly to speak with the videographer. Yes, he did indeed record the entire event on film. He gave me a copy of the videotape and grinned widely. He was prepared to create a backup in the event that the primary was damaged. I hastily put my signature on the document granting permission to upload the film to YouTube. I thought it would go viral and make my mother feel even more ashamed. I leaped out into the parking lot with Bobby. We had placed our baggage in the trunk after he had driven his car here. We were going to get them into the limo and head out of the reception. After the reception, his brother was going to take him back to his flat. I got into the passenger seat with a smile on my face, knowing that Dad would adore Bobby. When he switched on the ignition and the massive 440-cylinder engine roared to life, I got aroused right away. Even though it wasn't GM, the 1969 Challenger was an incredible vehicle. As we sped out of the parking lot, he inquired, "Where are we going?" Working the phone, I said, "Go west on 156, I'll find the address and put it in Waze." Since he wasn't trying to hide, it wasn't hard. I knew the town he lived in, and the information I needed came from looking through the real estate records. About 2 hours separated them. All we could do was pray that when we arrived, he would be at home. I was on a mission and didn't want to waste time, so we didn't stop to change clothing. Opening the front door to find a man in a tuxedo and a woman in a bridal gown sitting on the porch is an uncommon sight. It would undoubtedly happen occasionally if you were a priest living in a church. The issue was that I didn't reside at the church and I wasn't a priest. Even more astonishing was the fact that I could tell which one was which. Though I was unsure of her identity, I could tell that the person standing there was undoubtedly my eldest daughter, who had expressed her desire to no longer see me. She was being married today, I remembered, but I couldn't figure out why she was here. She has to be at the reception, in church, or her route to her honeymoon. It was the exact last place she should be, standing on my porch. She said in a tiny voice, "Daddy, can I talk to you for a minute, please?" I took a step back, still in shock, and allowed them in. I pointed to Marie and Jenny's sitting area in the living room. I saw the looks of disbelief on their faces. "Oh, Carly, this is my wife, Marie, and our daughter, Jenny." "Jenny, Marie, this is Carly." "I'm sorry, but I don't know who the guy with her is." "Oh, yes, Dad, this is my fiancé, Bobby Jensen." "Bobby, and this is my dad, Tom Williams, his wife Marie, and my sister Jenny," said Carly. "Fiancé? I thought he was already your husband." Didn't you just get married a couple of hours ago? I was perplexed. That's what I need to talk to you about. I can't do it today. I can't get married unless Daddy walks me down the aisle. Daddy, I finally get it. You're right. You've always been right. I'm sorry I got caught up in Mom's and blamed you. It was Mom who gave up on us, not you who gave up on us. I'm sorry for everything I said and did. You didn't deserve any of it. I won't make excuses for my behavior because there really are no excuses, except that I was young and stupid and listened to the wrong people. I just hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me and let me back into your life. I really want to marry Bobby. He's a really great guy, and I know you'll like him. But I can't marry him unless you agree to walk me down the aisle and marry me off. It was wholly unanticipated. There seemed to be an elephant or two in the room, but I probably should have been paying attention to other things. The curiosity that overcame me at the sight of this event demanded attention, but I was extremely delighted that my daughter had determined that I wasn't the bastard who had abandoned them and that she wanted me back in her life. So, Carly, did something happen at the wedding? I mean, you're wearing a wedding dress, and Bob's in a tuxedo, so I'm assuming you really were at the wedding, I asked. First, she glanced at her partner. She held out the disc and said, maybe you should watch. Bobby and I change into our regular clothes. Oh, yes, we were already halfway through the ceremony when an epiphany came over me. Marie led Carly into the bedroom so they could change, while Bobby hurried to the van to grab the suitcase. I set up a video player and connected it to the living room's large screen while all of this was going on. Marie returned and took a seat beside me as soon as Carly and Bobby were ready, and I hit the play button on the remote. The groomsmen led the bridesmaids down the aisle and separated them at the altar, just like in a typical wedding ceremony. First the flower girl, then Bobby, carrying the priest's ring, came inside. At last, Carly was led down the aisle by Clarence. Up until Carly began uttering wedding vows, everything was really normal. However, that was also typical to some extent. It was difficult for her to speak suddenly. Her focus appeared to be on a single word. It was her. Jenny thought to herself, I can't believe she actually did it, and that it hit her so hard. Just as I was going to ask her what she was talking about, Carly changed everything and gave up on saying her vows. We saw the footage of her calling off the wedding and going to talk to her mother. Her confessions astonished me. It seems that since she married Clarence, her infidelity has intensified. When the video was over, Carly and Bobby were back in the living room, changing clothes. Carly stated, I just couldn't follow through with it. Bobby would be so devastated if I did to him what Mom did to you, I realized as I stared into his eyes. At last, I understood the true meaning of renounce all, and that Mom had betrayed that promise. Subsequently, I came to see the extent of her dishonor and my own, having married you without giving you the respect you so richly deserve. In a ceremony when the place of honor is occupied by two of the most despicable persons I know, how can I make such solemn vows? If the most honorable person I know is not included in these vows, how can they really mean anything? I came to the realization that my dad, the man who had genuinely instilled morals and integrity in me, needed to walk me down the aisle if I truly wanted these vows to mean anything. I made the decision that you should be there, not Mom and Clarence, when I marry Bobby, Carly said, pausing briefly before grinning and turning to face Jenny. Plus, I need my younger sister to be a bridesmaid. It was your kick in the ass that woke me up, she said, remembering their earlier conversation. They talked for a few more hours. Jenny didn't realize that she had gotten Carly's phone number from her phone right after she went out to the workshop after Carly's call that afternoon. Carly went to her room and a few minutes later called Carly on her own phone. It was getting late, and I asked them to stay the night in the guest bedroom. Throughout the evening, Carly received several phone calls. She ignored the calls from Clarence and Kayla, but several of her friends called as well. Apparently, several of the guests accepted her offer to have some fun at Clarence's expense. He tried to cancel, but it was too late for a refund. By the time he got to the reception venue, there were already a few dozen people there taking advantage of the open bar. The food was already being prepared too, and all the servers, bartenders, and DJ were already in place and working. Eventually, Clarence gave up, grabbed a drink, and moved to a table in the corner to drown his sorrow. Josh sent her a video taken on his phone when his mom came over to talk to Clarence. It didn't seem to go well. Clarence was yelling a lot. The words cheating took up most of the conversation. It looked like that relationship was about to end as well. Josh said he was able to cancel his plane and resort reservations, had to pay a 20% penalty for not canceling on time. Since Carly and Bobby had already taken time off work for their honeymoon, they stayed with us all week. I reconnected with the daughter I thought I had lost. I also got to know Bobby better. He's a great guy with strong morals. The relationship was a little strained at first, as the only things he had heard about me were lies told to him by my ex-wife, son, and daughter. Well, not really lies, but rather embellishing the truth that painted me as a bad guy who abandoned his family. In addition, there were several important facts left out in these conversations. After the truth started to come out, he started to treat me warmer. It helped when I showed him my store and my latest projects. Although he liked the classic Dodges better, we both appreciated each other's cars. Hey, we're both tech fans, at least. He didn't drive an automatic like those wimps. His Challenger had a manual gearbox. During the middle of the week, a new wedding date was decided upon, 1 year later, to take place at the same location on the same weekend. I would be paying for her and walking her down the aisle. Besides, Marie was going to be called upon to help with the wedding. Yeah, Jenny was going to be a bridesmaid too. Carly and Bobby called everyone in the wedding party and gave them the latest news. Well, everyone except Kayla and Clarence. Over the next few months, Carly and I worked hard to rebuild our relationship. Bobby and I also got to know each other better. We attended several car shows, participating in Marie's GTO, my '72 truck, Bobby's Challenger, and even got Jenny to participate in the 1974 Firebird I bought for her. Carly and Bobby would come over and spend a couple of days with us a couple of times a month. Josh even showed up a few times. It was harder with him because he was always closer to his mother than he was to me, but we rebuilt some of our relationship. I think he did it more for Carly's sake than mine, but I agree. Besides, he always had some news from home. By the way, things were not going well between Kayla and Clarence. Clarence had moved out and filed for divorce. The good news for Kayla was that Clarence had filed for divorce because of irreconcilable differences, not adultery. This meant that the harsh penalties of the prenuptial agreement would not apply. He filed in such a way as to end it quickly and without a fight. The good news for Clarence was that he had a prenup. The nuptial agreement stated that all property he owned before he got married was not subject to division. Kayla would get half of the property acquired during the marriage, but even that would not be enough when you consider the property acquired before the marriage. She would mostly get the house and about $50,000. As for the house, Clarence did try to get a piece of it, but he had no proof that he was entitled to it. Sure, it was his money that was used to buy out my share after the divorce, but there was no real proof of that. Apparently, he took out a business loan for his company to get the money, but never documented exactly what he spent it on. In addition, they never put his name on the certificate of title for the house. Since the house had belonged to Kayla before they were married, she refused to even discuss the topic. Clarence ended up paying off the loan but accomplished nothing. By the time he realized that the money for the house would not be returned to him, it was too late to file an adultery complaint. Rumors of Kayla's adventure spread, and her credibility in the community suffered greatly. Friends began to avoid her, and invitations to parties, charity events, and other occasions dried up. Worse, because she didn't work and relied on Clarence's money, her financial situation deteriorated badly. Clarence learned an expensive lesson. He lost a couple hundred buying out my half of the house, another $28,000 for the wedding that went south. He also had to pay Kayla $50,000 in the divorce, and then there was the humiliation. Kayla was furious that her adventures had been made public and that Clarence was divorcing her the way he did. She started telling her remaining friends that she cheated on him because he has such a small penis and doesn't even know how to use it properly. She also told all her girlfriends that he refused to lick her, even though he demanded that she suck him off. This kind of gossip spreads like wildfire. It wasn't long before all the women he tried to pick up at the bar just laughed at him. He became a recluse, only going to work and straight home. His social life evaporated. Ready, Daddy, the doors opened, music filled the church, and I stepped in, starting with my left foot, and proudly led my daughter down the aisle. I glanced over, and my smile grew even wider. My ex-wife was sitting in the fourth row. My wife Marie was taking her place of honor in the front row. I would join her after taking care of one last important honor for my daughter. No father is willing to let his daughters go, but I'm honored to do it for you. My oldest daughter asked, I yelled, as a father, I give her as my wife. I gave her a quick kiss on the cheek and gave her to Bobby, whispering, I love you, baby. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention my wife. No, this wasn't my idea. Carly had asked me to do it that way. I pivoted and moved closer to my spouse, settling down next to her, to cherish and caress her through good times and bad. Carly virtually shrieked the last phrase, leaving everyone else behind. Then she smiled brightly and concluded her commitment. It was a lovely ritual. There was a cheer when they sealed the deal with a kiss. Marie was standing next to me when I peered down from the head table. Kayla was seated at a table off to the side, and she didn't appear to be happy. She scowled each time she glanced up to see Marie seated there. She was taking advantage of the open bar, I noted. No one had invited Clarence. If he had received an invitation, I don't know if he would have attended. I had finished my final big project for my kid. My wife and I danced to the second song, while my daughter, her husband, and his parents danced to the first. I also escorted her down the aisle, got married, and presented a lovely toast to the newlyweds. I had completed my tasks. With my wife at the table, I took a seat. Among the many boys vying for her attention, my youngest daughter was dancing. A familiar voice behind me asked for my wife. "Pardon me, Marie, won't you? May I ask your husband to this dance?" Marie and I turned to look at my former spouse. I took Kayla to the floor as a slow song began to play, and Marie glanced at her for a moment before responding, "Just be sure to return him to where you found him." Marie frowned at me. "I trust you, but I don't trust her not to do anything stupid." If that was the reason she had asked for it, I wouldn't be shocked. I made an effort to avoid drawing her near to me. After a little while of dancing, she spoke. "You were supposed to give me that one night. We were supposed to forget about it and go on with our lives as normal. Tonight was supposed to be just the two of us, and you shouldn't have left that night. You should have known better than to think I wouldn't mind you cheating on me, no matter how many times you did it. I didn't cheat. I told you about it before I did it. I didn't sneak around behind your back. Whether you told me or not is immaterial. The fact that you had sex with someone else is cheating. Besides, I didn't give you permission. I told you not to do it, but you did it anyway. I never wanted this. I only wanted one night, and then we could be together forever. You know you're the only man I've ever loved. I've never had the slightest love for him. Besides, the sex wasn't that great. He was selfish and not even as big as you. Then why did you marry him? Because you divorced me, of course. I didn't love him, but I liked him. After you left, I didn't want to be alone. I thought I could love him, but I could never get over you. I did all those nasty things to you because I was angry that you left me. I still loved you, but you wouldn't even talk to me after that one night. I realized that you were all I needed, and I would never date another man again. So why did you cheat on him? Because he was a failure in bed. I thought I could train him, but he refused to listen to advice. He refused to go down on me, and I stopped giving him. He would just stick it in, pump for a few minutes, erupt, and then roll over and fall asleep. When I couldn't take it anymore, I found a couple of other guys who could actually bring me to orgasm. I had no idea Carly knew anything about it. Even if I had known she knew about all of this, I never would have thought she would leave me to my own devices like that. I feel really sorry for you. We had a really great marriage, but you abandoned it for one night of mediocre sex. I don't think there's any chance. I couldn't contain my laughter. Not just no, but very no. First of all, even if I wasn't married now, what you did by setting my children on me destroyed any possibility of us ever getting back together again. I am now remarried to the woman I love, and I have another daughter that I love as well. The best I can offer is the courtesy of being in the same place and at any events with our children and grandchildren. Thankfully, the song soon ended. I never spoke to her again that evening. She couldn't afford to pay the mortgage on the house, so she eventually sold it and moved into a small apartment. Money from the sale of the house was enough for her to live on if she was careful. She occasionally went on dates with her girlfriends, but as far as I know, she never had any other relationships. Clarence ended up living alone too. Carrie and Bobby had a long, loving marriage. They had 3 children, 2 boys and 1 girl. Josh eventually married a nice girl as well. 2 daughters were born to them. As far as I know, neither of them cheated on each other. There are those who think I should have gotten revenge on Kayla and Clarence. The reality is that I couldn't hurt them in any way without going to jail or getting retaliated against. I decided to just move forward and live my life as best I could. As they say, the best revenge is a life well lived. That's what I did, and let karma deal with the rest. Karma is and her stripper name is Revenge. Clarence and Kayla didn't burn, but they didn't walk away unscathed. No, I had nothing to do with it, but I still feel good. I have my wife, daughter, and 2 other children back in my life. I am surrounded by people who love me. I have a good life. Ready, Daddy? Inquired my daughter. No father is willing to let his daughters go, but I'm honored to do it for you, I responded. The church was packed with music when the doors opened. I took a stride, leading my daughter down the aisle with pride, placing my left foot first. My spouse assumed her honored position in the front and grinned widely. After attending to a final significant duty for my daughter, I joined her. Don't worry, Dad. I'm going to do it today. I talked to Carly, and I'm going to do it right the first time, Jenny reassured me. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, so subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.